guys, it's Amy with A to Z Stamping, and today I wanted to show you just a few very basic watercoloring techniques. Watercoloring is really popular. It's always been popular, and Stampin' Up! Makes it pretty easy. There's a few different basic techniques that I like to use, so I thought I would share them with all of you. Okay, first of all, we do have our watercolor paper. They come in 6x9 sheets, and you get 5 in a package. And so if you just want to do basic watercoloring, the watercolor paper is the way to go. You can watercolor on our cardstock, and then you can also watercolor on the glossy white cardstock. It works really well on that. And this comes with 10 in a package of 8.5 by 11 glossy. And I don't know if you could tell, but it's glossy paper, so that works really well too. Okay, so I'm going to grab just a piece of the, actually, let me tuck this back in here. I'm going to grab a piece of, I hold on to all of my scraps. Okay, I've got a piece of the cardstock, or sorry guys, watercolor paper right here. And what you want to do is you want to pick out what ink color you're going to do. So I'm just going to do a basic background. And so I have Elegant Eggplant right here. And you want to open it up and leave it open like that. And then you're going to need your re-inkers. Re-inkers are always good to have because obviously they're for re-inking your ink pads, but they're also great for watercoloring. So I'm just going to put a drop or two. Let's see, let's go 2 right there. Let me close that up. Put that away. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my Aqua Painter. So remember, when you buy the Aqua Painters, they come in a set of 2. There's a medium brush and a broader brush, and you just fill them with water. Okay, and then I'm going to drop some, just a few drops of water in here. So the more water you drop in, obviously, the lighter it's going to end up being. Okay, and then let me mix that all together. Okay, and this is a really dark color, Elegant Eggplant is, so this is a lot darker than well, then most of the other colors are going to be. But you can see as I go more down, it's getting lighter. But anyway, so you would just go ahead and watercolor on there to get a background. And you could make really pretty different backgrounds this way. Okay. So like I said, you just brush it on there and decide how you want it. It's going to be darker when you first start, and then it gets lighter. Okay. And then obviously it's going to dry, and when it dries, it's going to lighten up just a little bit. Okay, so this would be basic, like I want to do a watercolor background. But then I want to stamp onto it, and I still want it to be a very much of a watercolor look. Okay, so and then you just run your Aqua Painter. I'm not squeezing it or anything, I'm just running it until it's clear. Okay, put the lid back on that. I'm done with my Elegant Eggplant, but let me grab one. Here's one I did earlier that's already dry. Okay, because now I'm going to stamp. I have this flower from the Flourishing Phrases stamp set right here, and I want to stamp this onto my card front, but I want it to look like a watercolor. Sorry guys, my hairs are going everywhere. I want it to look watercolor-y. So I'm just going to take my Island Indigo ink pad, ink it up, and then I'm grabbing my Stampin Spritzer here. So this just is filled with water. And let's see, I want to make sure I don't spray myself in the face. I'm just going to spray that a couple times. So see how the ink is pooling up on there? That's what I want. And I'm going to stamp this right onto here. So let's go 1. Okay, and it's going to look like that, all pooled and weird like that, and that's fine. And I'm going to do another one, 2. See, that one's even lighter. And then I'm going to do a third one, even lighter. Okay? Now, let me grab my scrub and clean this off. Okay, and I can put my stamp away. And then I want to grab the thank you so very much stamp. Thank you so very much. And I'm going to just ink that up, and I'm not going to spritz this one. I'm just going to stamp this one right onto here. There we go, like that. Okay, clean that off. Okay, and now let's set that aside and let it dry, and I'll show that to you in a second, because we need to let it dry. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside, close up my ink. Okay, while I show you the next technique. All right, let me put the lids back on everything. All right. Okay, so next I have the watercolor pencils. Okay, so this one was just using the watercolor paper and the Aqua Painters, some re-inker and your ink. You can, if you don't have your re-inkers, you can take your stamp pad and squeeze to get some ink in the palette and then use the Aqua Painter. It's just it works a lot better with the ink re-inker because you want a significant amount of ink. Look, that's starting to dry. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so the watercolor pencils. They come out in a package like this, and there are all of these colors. So there's 13 total. This one's actually white. I know it's hard to see. So there's 13 total pencils. And they're your standard watercolor pencils. Here we go. Okay. And I'm going to take this piece of Whisper White cardstock here. This is just our regular Whisper White cardstock. And I'm going to use a basic black ink pad. And I'm going to show you 3 different techniques with the watercolor pencils. So I'm going to grab a flower here. Flower. This is from the Flower Shop stamp set, and I'm going to use this flower right here. All right. And I'm going to stamp it 3 times in basic black just to show you 1, 2, 3. The different ways the watercolor pencils work. Okay, let me clean off my stamp. Okay. All right. So the first thing is you can just use the watercolor pencils just like they are and color with them and shade. Let's see. Let's do all of our flowers in this Flirty Flamingo color. Is this Flirty Flamingo? It looks like Flirty Flamingo to me. Let's see. What does it say? Actually, no, this is Calypso Coral. All right. Actually, I want to do a pinkish color. I think I'll go with Melon Mambo right here. Let's do a Melon Mambo. Okay. So this first one, if I wanted to just color with the color pencils, so I would, you know, well, this is what I do. I like to kind of dark some of it, and then I would just shade it with my pencils. All right. And I can outline the flower if I want, like so. If your pencils get dull, you just sharpen them. Just get a basic pencil sharpener. Any basic pencil sharpener works. Okay, so this is just using the watercolor pencils. And they would work just like any color pencils you would imagine they would work. All right. There we go. Shade that, shade that. Okay, so that's just using the pencils. Now let's show you again. Now this time I'm going to show you what it would look like using the blender pen. So again, I'm just going to come in here and do some shading like so. Doesn't take a lot because it's going to pull from the colors. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to just put, okay. And let me grab my blender pen right here. So the blender pen already has the liquid inside, and there's a thinner end and a wider end, but they're basically the same. The blender pen works a lot like a marker. So what you would do is you would start, and you're basically going to pull the ink away. Can you see that? So see how it's pulling the color, and then I can color it in just as if I had a Melon Mambo marker. But it's obviously going to be a little bit lighter. And if I wanted more deeper, darker color, I would have just used a little bit more pencil before I started pulling. Color that in. Okay, so the blender pen, I have a lot of control to pull the color out because it's basically turns any watercolor pencil into an ink color or a marker. Okay, you see that? So it's a little bit different than that. Can you see? So this one's still a little bit lighter. This one is almost a shade lighter than regular Melon Mambo. Okay, and let me run this so it's clean. Done. Okay, now let me show you this last one. I'm going to do the same thing again, just shade these in. And this time I'm going to show you what it would look like with the Aqua Painter. So the Aqua Painter is more like a paintbrush, so you have a lot less control. Let me make sure my Aqua Painter's clean. So again, I'm going to pull the color, but this is like a paintbrush, so I have a lot less control than I do with the blender pen. but this is definitely more of a watercolor effect. Okay, can you see that? So the watercolor pencils are really fun to have because you have 3 different ways you can use them. And if you don't have any of these ink pad colors yet, run it till it's clear, you could use these as your ink pad. So let me show you this up close. So with the watercolor pencil, you can see it's pretty light. It does look like how you would imagine a pencil would look. With the blender pen, it's a little more precise, and then with the Aqua Painter, it's even lighter and it just pulls with a paintbrush. So it's really fun to do watercolor painting with your watercolor pencils. I think it's neat. Okay, let me show you this next technique. Okay, I'm gonna grab my Tangerine Tango ink pad, and this is called watercolor lifting. So you want to take your ink pad, and I'm going to open it up, and I had already dropped a couple drops of my re-inker in there. I did that earlier, and I'm going to grab my blender pen, and where did my paper go? Okay, I'm going to use the back side of this one. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and I'm going to again do a background, and this is just on regular Whisper White cardstock. This isn't watercolor paper, so it's a little bit different effect than the watercolor paper has. Okay, it looks like I'm going to need a little bit more. So again, I'll just drop a couple drops with the re-inker. And then with the Aqua Painter, squeeze and get some water in there. Squeeze, 1, 2, 3, 4, and make a nice little palette. This is going to be darker than what I had before. That's okay though. Okay, so go ahead and get this all on here. Come on. And I'm being kind of messy. If you were doing a really cool project, you would probably be a little more precise and do a nicer job of your watercolor wash here. But actually, I'm okay with this because I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so remember, this is called watercolor lifting. Okay, and that looks good. Okay, and run that until it's clear. That looks good. Close this up. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, okay, it's still wet, but that's okay. Where did my lid go here? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a stamp, and I'm going to use this Remarkable You. I'm going to use the big flower here. And let me get this onto a block. Big block, where are you? Right here. And I'm going to ink it up in the VersaMark, because again, we want to lift the color from the watercoloring. So I'm going to ink it up in my VersaMark, and I'm going to stamp it right here in the center. And then I'm also going to grab these giant leaves. Let me clean this off. You always want to clean your VersaMark off your stamps right away. Okay, and I'm going to grab this big giant leaf, and I'm going to just add a few of these around the edges. So I'm going to go one. And you guys probably can't see the VersaMark, but I can see it, so I know where I've stamped it already. 2, 3. And let's do a little bit right here. Okay, let me clean that off. All right. So now I'm going to put the lid on my VersaMark so I don't ruin that. And I'm going to grab my clear embossing powder, but let me fold my paper in half first to make it a little bit easier on myself. Okay, and I'm going to pour my clear embossing powder over the top of the whole thing. Okay, be very generous with your embossing powder. All right, and then tap, tap, tap. Can you see that? So I see where it's all on there, and I'm going to dump this back in. This is just basic embossing. Okay, put the lid on this, and now I will grab my heat tool and emboss this. Okay, watch the magic happen. There it goes. It's already starting to work. Doesn't take long at all. Now you see my paper's curling, that's okay. That's normal with watercoloring, and so you just need to put adhesive on all 4 sides when you go to adhere it to something. All right, can you guys see it changing? I'll show you close up in just a second. So cool. Heat embossing really is the coolest thing ever. Okay. And it's so easy. And the last little corner. All right. All right, you guys, can you see that? So it lifted, can you see that? It lifted the color. So in some areas, like it's really light there because it was really light underneath. Isn't that so cool? Okay, and here's one I did earlier just to speed this up a little. I actually did that and then I took and mounted it onto a card. I stamped the "You Are Remarkable." And in person, this is really neat. It's kind of hard to show on the camera, but isn't that cool? So that's called watercolor lifting. And I just wanted to show you one last technique with watercoloring that you can do if you have any of our markers. So I'm going to take this stamp right here. It's still from the Remarkable You set. It just comes in 2 stamp cases because the stamps are so large. And I'm going to stamp in basic black right here onto some of our watercolor paper. So let me ink this up. Okay, watercolor paper. And I'm going to stamp this right here. Okay. And let me clean that off real quick. Okay, all clean. All right, so now if you own any markers, you can also watercolor. So I pulled out 2 markers. This is Perfect Plum and Garden Green. And I like to use, there's a skinny end for writing and then this fatter end. So on this fatter end here, I'm going to just take my marker and I'm just going to do a line, okay? And then, well, just to show you how this works, I'm not sure that this flower really looks like this, but I'm just going to do a line there. And then with my, well, okay, so do one color at a time. So I'm going to grab my Aqua Painter and let me make sure it's clean. It is. Okay, so now I can pull the color with my Aqua Painter. You see that? Now normally you would start with your lightest color first, but I'm just trying to be quick here to finish this video up. Okay, so let me finish the green there. Then I'm going to take the Perfect Plum and I'm just going to put some in certain spots. You don't have to do the whole thing because you're going to pull the color. Okay, and now I'll grab my Aqua Painter and I'm pulling the color. You see that? So you see, guys, even if you only have markers and an Aqua Painter, you can still watercolor. And obviously, if you wanted it darker, I would outline the whole thing. But your Aqua Painter is going to pull the color from the marker. So just strategically decide where you want it. But normally with watercoloring, you want it to be sort of lighter, not, if you wanted it full inked up, you would just color it in with markers in the first place. All right, and let me show you this close up. You see that? Isn't that pretty? So anyway, there you go, guys. There's, what did we do? 4 different ways to watercolor. So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And join my Facebook group, A to Z Stamping. Thanks, guys. Bye.